Hello, everybody. Welcome. I can see many participants starting to trickle in. If you are joining us live tonight, then it is Tuesday, March the 18th of 2025, and you are probably here for a college Make It Happen workshop. This is for DePortola families, and if anyone else happens to get on, that's great as well. So this presentation is for middle school students, middle school parents, and families, and it is basically just to give you an idea of career research, college and the college admissions process, and also paying for college. And so I know some of you might be students, some of you might be parents, some of you might be family members, and sometimes you might be together, or there just might be a student only or a parent only. It's all great. It's all fine. I'm just going to mention, you'll probably notice that you're not able to type into the chat. However, you're able to view the chat. And the first question people usually ask me is, will I be able to have access to this recording? And will I be able to have access to the slide deck? And the answer to both of those is yes. So you'll see right now in the chat, I'm putting a hyperlink to our CalSoap San Diego website. The blog section, as of tomorrow, I'll be posting this recording. So if you want to watch it on YouTube anytime at your leisure, you can do that. It can be for people who didn't attend live tonight as well. And then also, I'll attach a PDF version of the slide deck there with clickable links in it, so that if you would like anything from the slide decks, you can get that directly tomorrow. So yes, you will have access to the recording, and anyone else will, and you will have access to the slide deck. So hopefully that's a number one question I get from the beginning, and I just want to reassure you. Also, although you can't type a question in the chat, we do have a Q&A. So possibly at the top or bottom of your Zoom screen, you might see a Q&A button. And when you click on it, you would be able to ask questions in the Q&A. And although when I'm sharing screen, I do have a slide deck. And when I'm sharing screen, I'm not able to see the Q&A, but we do have DePortola counselor Amy Erickson here. And she's going to be just kind of monitoring, especially if there's any questions that are specific to like DePortola or Canyon Hills or anything like at your school or in your area specifically. She'll be able to answer that question in the Q&A. And if not, if there's something that she wants to read out loud to me so that I can make sure to stop and address, I'm happy to do that as well. All right. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if there are things that you would like me to address, please do put them in the Q&A, and I will do my best to answer your questions. And we'll go ahead and get started. Just give me one moment. All right. So my name is Carla Whitaker. My email address, if you have any questions after this, you're welcome to email me. I'm at kkwhitaker@ucsd.edu. Also, you can find our information on our website, which is calsoapsandiego.org. That's where a lot of times people go to find out about scholarships, events, opportunities that we have, webinars that we have, services that we provide. CalSoap is part of the California Student Aid Commission, and we are on X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So we do have a presence there, and that's where we try to keep a lot of really up-to-date information. You're welcome to give us a follow. We love it. And I know that right now there's a lot of content for 12th graders, but whenever we can, we include content for younger students as well. So for students, when I'm doing this as a student-only presentation, I usually start by asking students, what words do you think of when you hear college? And they say all kinds of things. They say school, they say tests, they say dorms, finals, opportunities, scholarships. The other day I was at a middle school where a student said crippling student debt, and that rings true. I hear that too. So yes, college is many things. Sometimes students think of it as someplace you go to and it's away. And also they think of it as something that's 4 years. And I let them know it doesn't have to always be away. You can also live at home and go to college. It can also be part-time or full-time. And for some students, it might be 4 years or 2 years or 10 years or 12 years. It really depends. But the main thing people should know is that it's something to prepare you for a future job or career. And for students, one of the main differences that distinguishes it from high school and middle school is that in college, you choose your classes and you choose your major. You choose which classes on which days of the week with which professors within, there are some ramifications, but it gives you more choice in what you study. You do have to take some general education requirements, but usually, especially as you get farther along in college, the more classes you take are in the specific subject you're studying, which brings me to the idea of a major. If students are unaware, a major is the specific subject that you're taking the most classes in while you're working on an undergraduate degree. So there aren't majors in every single topic on earth. Sometimes students say, well, I love books. Can I major in books? Or I love animals. Can I major in animals? And I'll say, no, not exactly, but maybe you could major in biological sciences, animal sciences. Maybe you could major in English or literature or creative writing. And sometimes students, they've heard about things like double majors when you graduate with 2 majors, or a major and a minor, where the minor is the thing you take the second most classes in working on your undergraduate degree. So these are some examples of common majors. This is not an exhaustive list. There are dozens, if not hundreds of majors offered, but it could be something like engineering or business administration. It could be a science like biology, chemistry, or physics. It could be a language like English or Spanish. It could be psychology, history, communication, computer science, visual or performing arts, education. And when students ask like, well, how do I find a major, or how do I know if a college has my major? One of the websites I recommend to them is mymajors.com. And it does let you you can do a self quiz or you can skip that part, but it does let you find out all the different colleges and which majors they have. So if you're saying, where is there a marine science major, or where is there an electrical engineering major, or an aerospace aeronautical engineering major, or where is there a nursing degree, mymajors.com keeps a pretty up-to-date list of that. So I do recommend that as a website for students who are trying to explore what major should I be and where do they offer it. And as you do career exploration, another really good website I recommend is California Career Zone. It's at cacareerzone.org. It's very user-friendly for students. So say if you were an adult, if you're a parent, you might be using more of a website like ONET Online or San Diego Workforce Partnership to find out like what jobs are in the San Diego area in my career, or ONET Online gives you a lot of like Bureau of Labor Statistics type of thing. California Career Zone is specifically created for students, like middle and high school students, where they can take easy self quizzes. They answer with emoji faces. It's not hard to navigate. It's definitely a very user-friendly interface for younger students. So cacareerzone.org is a really good one that I like. And they have interesting programs both on career interests and also things like how to create a budget, how to adult, things like that. What lifestyle do you want and how much money would that take a year to afford that lifestyle? And this is something that I know that this isn't an in-person presentation, but so it's not something I'm going to ask you to stop and have a conversation about right now necessarily, but these are good conversations for students and parents to have to start thinking about, all right, it's okay if the answer is I don't know, but when you're thinking about your future and college and career, you might start thinking about like, well, what is your favorite subject? Because maybe that could lead to a major one day. What problem in the world do you want to solve? Sometimes that gives people an idea of what they might want to do as a livelihood, as a calling or a career. Do you have a dream job? Maybe if there were no chance of failing or no barriers like money or anything, what is a dream job you would have? Maybe has the student thought about what college they want to attend? And for whatever career they want, do they know how much college they need? Do they know the level of training or the degree they would need for a career? And at this age, in middle school, it's not like students have to make huge decisions now. It's more just a time of exploration. And although we know that college costs money, I look at it as an investment. However, like any investment, it's a business choice and you want to make it with a business mind. You don't just want to say, hey, it's my kid's dream to go to college. We will do anything and we will borrow as much money as it takes to make it happen. We also want to look at grants and scholarships, and we want to be smart about choosing a good college that's a good financial fit and seeing what is their earning potential on the back end. So I like to show students, we do have this that shows median weekly earnings and median annual salary according to education level or educational attainment. And I often like to show students this one that actually shows over the course of a lifetime, what is your increased earning potential? So I tell students, first of all, these aren't guarantees. Someone can be a high school dropout, a college dropout, and be a millionaire, billionaire, absolutely, because of things like hard work, talent, and luck. Right. So if you have those things, then it's very possible to be extremely wealthy. Also, you can have the highest degree in the land. You can have an MD, you can have a doctorate, you can have a master's. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you will make more, because you still have to work hard. You still have to have talent. You still have to have luck. But in general, if we were going to just look based on at averages based on educational level, this just shows that the more education you have, the more options you have, and the more earning potential you have. So the more choices you have, instead of a job being chosen for you because it's the only one you're qualified for, when you have more education and when you have more training, often that is something that gives you more choice and more earning potential. You'll notice that over the course of a lifetime, if someone did not have a high school diploma, they probably have an earning potential of just under $1 million. And students are often very impressed by that. And I say, yes, that is an impressive amount. However, if you spread that out over, from age 20 to 80 plus, in the course of a lifetime, it might be hard to make ends meet. Notice that just by being able to say that I'm a high school graduate on your job application, that earning potential goes up to 1.3 million. And then notice that for every time you have a little bit of college, or maybe an associate's degree, maybe a bachelor's degree, every time you get more training, your average earning potential goes up. And it's the same for a master's degree. And it's the same for many professional and doctorate degrees. You'll notice that those things take time, those things are work, and those things cost money. But on the back end, they do give you more options, more choices, and more earning potential. Okay, or hopefully they do. So I like to remind students that and parents that yes, college costs money, but hopefully it is an investment that is going to pay for itself. If it doesn't, then it's not worth the investment, in my opinion, as far as a business decision. All right. And I like to remind students that yes, college is adulting. Yes, college is school. And yes, that it is work and there's homework, etc. But it's also a place that is fun and where you can learn and you can grow. I know San Diego is very excited right now because it has 4 NCAA Division I basketball teams from UCSD and SDSU, both the men's and women's, that are going on in March Madness right now. And so if you love to watch sports, that's going to be available at colleges. If you love to play sports, whether it's because you want to play it competitively and like for the college, or whether you want to play it recreationally, colleges have these facilities. They have gyms, they have pools, they have tracks, they have baseball and softball and soccer fields. All right. So kind of keep that in mind, that sports can be a great part of college life. A lot of times there might be a quarter or semester where you can study abroad, still get covered by financial aid, learn a new language and a new culture and travel, and have it count towards your degree. It's a place you'll make friendships and connections. There'll be clubs, there'll be leadership opportunities, there will be community service opportunities. It's also a place where you can get jobs and internships either when you're in college and or after college, because they'll have a career center that will have placement options. It's a place where many people find maybe a professor, a TA, a staff member, someone who becomes a mentor to them. They also have a student health services center, and they'll also have discounts, especially for college students. So discounts to things like movies and shows and technology like Apple and Amazon. You'll get an Amazon Prime student membership for a much discounted rate. You can get your Hulu Disney Plus subscription for a discounted college student rate, things like that. So these are some of the little perks and benefits of college. I like to make sure students remember that it is school, it is work, it is also fun and enriching. I also like to tell people, think about what would make your life worth it. I hope that students, you can have a profession that allows you to make a wonderful living so that if you want to purchase a home or have a family or to travel or whatever it is that you find rewarding, I hope that you can make enough money to do that. Also, though, I hope that it is not a job that you hate. I would love it for it to be something that gives you purpose and that you find rewarding and fulfilling. So when we talk about getting your worth out of life and what will make it worth it, or ikigai, I like to think about these four things. What do you love? What are you good at? But then also, what does the world need? And what can you be paid for? I like to share my embarrassing story that I really love Candy Crush and I'm good at it. I'm like on above level 7,000, but nobody's paying me to do it. So it's not my job. I have to also find what the world needs and what I can be paid for. It's the same for students. Again, some resources like Big Future is a very good one. California Career Zone is a very good one. And if you're looking especially about different areas in the country, ONET Online and San Diego Workforce Partnership have a lot of great statistics about what industries are booming and hiring and what they pay and what they require. So the two main things that you want to research when you're looking at careers is, of course, how much education does it take? Like, does it take a certain degree? Like for to be an engineer, for example, the minimum requirement is a bachelor's degree. And then what is the salary? Like what salary would you start at, or what is the average salary? And whether you're interested in being a college professor, a K-12 teacher, an engineer, an accountant, a nurse, a counselor, a physical therapist, a doctor, a lawyer. There's lots of information out there about like the main things to think about now are like how much education does it require and what is the average salary for that job or career. All right. Okay, so a couple of points of terminology. College and school seems to be all about acronyms. Everything is an acronym. So I want to make sure you understand these important acronyms that have to do with college and what they each mean. So GPA, students and parents are already familiar with this. That is a grade point average. For some universities that are very competitive and selective, GPA is a main, very important factor on whether the student will be offered an acceptance or not. So I'll get into exactly what type of GPA different colleges look at and for what years and what classes, but grade point average is consistently among many different types of colleges. If it's a competitive selective college, GPA is often the number one factor or that they're looking at. What is your grade point average? Also, APs can be an important consideration for some selective colleges. That, of course, stands for Advanced Placement, which is a type of class students can take in high school, and there's also a test that goes along with it. So the class has one benefit, the test has a different benefit, and I'll kind of get into that. I'll also cover what are A through G classes. Luckily, your students should automatically be already enrolling in A through G classes when they get to high school because it's a requirement of the San Diego Unified School District to graduate. So most of them will be on track with their A through Gs as long as they're getting Cs and higher in those classes. And then the last thing is the SAT or ACT test. Things have changed a lot in the last few years where the California colleges, the California public colleges are no longer considering or requiring an SAT score. So the UCs do not look at an SAT score for admissions. The CSUs do not look at an SAT score for admissions. Community colleges never have. Now, there are some private schools that will either still consider it or maybe some even that require it. Like I know that Caltech has gone back to requiring an SAT score, for example. So there are some colleges and some universities, especially if they're private, especially if they're highly selective, but not necessarily. It could be public and out of state that have gone back to now requiring an SAT. And that's something I can share more information about with you. Okay, so grade point average is on a 0 to 4-point scale. However, you always hear about these students that get above a 4.0. How does that happen? Well, that is because there are some students who take AP classes or IB classes or a community college class, and they're getting dual enrollment. And as they do that, they get an extra bump or an extra point in their GPA. So for example, instead of an A being 4 points, if you were to take, say, for example, AP US History, an A in that class is worth 5 points, and a B is worth 4 points, and a C is worth 3. You don't get an extra point if you get a D or an F, unfortunately. But that is how some students get those grade point averages that are above a 4.0, is because they're taking some of their classes as advanced placement classes. And then if you get an A, B, or C in those classes, it does give you an extra point in your GPA. It's the same thing if you're taking a community college class. That also gives you an extra weight in your GPA, if it's your high school GPA and you're getting high school credit for it, okay, or dual credit for it. So with advanced placement classes, most of them are not available until high school, and sometimes until later in high school. Like most people start taking an AP class, maybe one their sophomore year, and they have them more sprinkled in their junior and senior year. It just depends on the class. So the AP course itself, getting your grade in that, finishing your 2 semesters, or however it's set up, that does give you an extra 1 point in your high school GPA. There is also a test that you can take in May, and the test is they score it on a 1 through 5 scale. Now, if you get a 3, 4, or 5 on that AP test, most colleges will also actually award you college credits or college units. The test score is not associated with your GPA. That's your grade in the course, in the class. But the test itself, if you opt to take the AP test, and hey, if you're going to take an AP class, I always say go ahead and take the AP test. But most colleges will give you college credit if you got a score of, sometimes it's a 3, 4, and 5. Sometimes it's just a 4 and 5. You have to check with the college. But that way you are showing that you can handle college level rigor. And you're also showing that you can start college instead of with 0 units or credits, you might actually be starting with some college credits. So that's how AP works. Now, A through G is the pattern of classes you need to take to be prepared at minimum for college, and I'll show that on the next slide. And again, SATs used to be required by nearly every university, but most universities have adopted relaxed policies. There are some, and again, especially the Ivy Leagues and out of states, also the military academies like West Point, they are starting to go back to requiring SATs. So Stanford now is going back to requiring it. Cornell, Johns Hopkins, universities that are highly selective. So when you say the GPA, you already know, looking at your transcript, there might be many different versions of the GPA. There's weighted and unweighted. There's 9 through 12 and 10, 11. There's all these, with and without PE. So the ones that, for example, most universities would look at, like a UC or a CSU, the GPA they're looking at when they're considering your application for admission is only going to be based on grades in classes that you took in grades 10 and 11. So even though they're looking at all your classes, sometimes even from middle school and higher, okay, and your classes 9th and 10th and 11th and what you're in 12th grade, but as far as the GPA, that's only going to be based on your 10th and 11th grade classes. And that's one reason why those 2 years are so very, very important in high school. They are also looking at a weighted GPA, where you do get extra points for approved honors and AP classes if you're getting an A, B, or a C. Also, the GPA they look at does not include PE. Okay, so PE is not included in the GPA. It's going to be based only on A through G courses. It won't be based on something like a TA or a library study hall or something like that. And unfortunately, a D or an F in any year or any class can disqualify you from a competitive university like a UC or a CSU. So hopefully that makes some sense. If not, feel free to put a question in the Q&A. And if Amy needs to unmute and ask me any of those questions out loud, I can try to answer. Okay. So these are the classes that students need to take in high school in order to be considered ready for college admissions at a university. A community college, it's an open admission policy, and as long as you're either 18 or have a diploma, it doesn't necessarily matter what classes you took in high school or what your GPA was. But for selective universities, okay, where they are not admitting 100% of people, you need to take these minimums. And sometimes to make yourself really competitive, you're not just want to take the minimum, you want to take the next step, what's not just required, but recommended, okay? Take a college like University of California, San Diego. UCSD is very selective. It's very competitive to get into UCSD. For freshmen, they probably have a little bit under a 25% admit rate. Okay, and so if you're choosing, if you want to go to UCSD, especially as a STEM major, and you're only taking 3 years of math instead of the recommended 4, that might not look so great. Okay, however, if you're doing a non-STEM major, it might not matter as much. But these are the classes and the number of years. You need to take 2 years of history or social science in high school. Okay, minimum. You need to take 4 years of English, minimum. You need to take 3 to 4 years of math. You need to take 2 to 3 years of science, 2 to 3 years of a language other than English, 1 year of a visual or performing art, and 1 year of an elective chosen from any of those A through F areas. A couple of things to point out here. The language other than English does need to be, if it's 2 years, it does need to be in the same language. In other words, you couldn't take Spanish 1-2 and then French 1-2. It would have to be Spanish 1-2 and then Spanish 3-4, okay? Or ASL 1-2 and ASL 3-4. I said that these are all classes that are taken in high school, but they will look back as far as middle school for 2 subjects, and that is math and a language other than English. So for example, in 8th grade, if a student is taking integrated math 1 or algebra 1, something like that, then that will count actually from middle school. That would be considered one of your years of math. So it doesn't have to be taken actually at the high school. Like the 4 years of English have to be taken in high school. The math, they will look back as far as middle school. And the other one they'll look back as far as middle school is the language other than English. So some students are already taking something like, Spanish 1-2 or something like that in 8th grade. And that, again, would count as a year as long as it counts as a year on your transcript. A couple other things, there are ways to pass out of the language other than English by taking a district exam or getting a certain score on the AP test or having somebody like a principal certify your competence in a language other than English. So there are some students who choose to get around the language other than English instead of taking it in high school. Sometimes they choose to test out of it in other ways. So that's a possibility. But for most of these other ones, these are classes that you're going to need to be taking in high school. All right, moving on. A through G classes, that is a different thing than GPA. So when a college admissions officer is looking at your application, they're looking at 2 different things. GPA is one factor, and that is the GPA that's based on grades earned in the sophomore and junior year of high school. And it also might cap the number of honors and AP points to keep everybody on a level playing field. So GPA is one factor, and that's the one that's just based on 10th and 11th grade grades. A through G, this is based, it's not the grade point part of it, but it's based on all the approved classes in grades 9 through 12, plus looking at middle school for math and language other than English. This is what can show that a student can take advantage of rigor and challenge. And it's also balanced by how many courses your high school offers. In other words, they're not going to penalize a student who attends a high school that's small and only offers 2 AP classes. You can't compare that student to a student who attends a high school that offers like 15 AP classes, right? So they do consider the student in the context of their high school. All right, so now I want to get into starting to connect career and college. Like I said before, college doesn't look the same for everybody. Some people live in a dorm, some people live at home, some people live off campus. Also, some people go part-time and some people go full-time. Some people take gap years. Some people also, you can go back to college later. It's not like you absolutely must have to go right after high school. There's no age maximum. Okay. So college can look different for everybody, and the amount of time and the amount of, units or degrees that you need, that's going to vary. So let's say that you wanted to get into automotive technology and you wanted to be a mechanic, or let's say you wanted to become an administrative assistant in an office. There are many programs that you could take at like a career technical or vocational school, sometimes called a trade school, or at a community college, where probably in less than a year or two, you could get into that field, get the training to get into that career. What if you wanted to do something like, you're thinking, okay, I can't afford and I don't have the time to go all the way through dental school, get my bachelor's and then go through dental school and then do my residency and all that. Or I don't know that I can make it all the way through my bachelor's and then 3 years of law school and then pass the bar, but I would like to work in the law. There are kind of adjacent careers like becoming a dental hygienist or becoming a paralegal, someone who works with attorneys in a law office, or maybe sometimes in accounting, where maybe if you're going full time, it might take about 2 years to get an associate degree and something like that. And you could start the career with maybe 2+ years of education. What a lot of people say when they say something like, I graduated from college, or I finished college, or I have a college degree, a lot of times they're talking about a bachelor's degree. And if you were to go full time for 4 years, on average, it takes about 4 years to get a bachelor's. Keep in mind, that is not a guarantee. There are some really competitive majors where it's hard to get all the classes you want, and it might take 4 years plus a quarter or plus a semester or 5 years. Also, if you change your major, if you change your college, sometimes that adds time on. Also, some people, like I said, go full-time or go part-time. Certain quarters, you might need to be taking on more of a work role and making money, or you might need to take a quarter or a semester off because sometimes life happens. Okay, so it's based on number of units, not the number of years necessarily. So when I say a 4-year degree, that's really based on the average for a full-time student. It could be 3. I do, honest to God, know someone who got their degree in 3 years because they took full-time classes every quarter and they took full-time classes every summer. So they were kind of adding on an extra quarter or two every single summer. So there are some jobs for which a bachelor would be like the minimum required, and then they can get into their career. There are some careers that require above a bachelor's degree, and that means you would need to go to something called graduate school. So yes, it's college after college. So what are some of those careers? It might be something like being a teacher, like a K-12 level teacher, or being a school counselor, being a therapist, an occupational or physical therapist. That's going to require a certificate program after the bachelor's. So first you'd have to get a bachelor's, then you'd have to get a certificate in that area. Sometimes it might also be combined with a master's in that area. And for example, if you wanted to teach at the community college level, you have to have at least a master's degree. If you wanted to teach at the university level, usually you have to have at least a doctorate degree. If you wanted to become a lawyer, an attorney, some students even are very ambitious and ask me, how do I become a judge? And I'll say, well, you start by becoming a lawyer first. But then after you get a bachelor's, you're going to apply to law school, probably take a test called the LSAT. And usually, again, if it's full-time, law school takes about 3 years. And at the end, even though you have a Juris Doctor degree, you still aren't technically a lawyer until you also pass the bar. And what jobs take usually the highest degree of education are the ones that take a doctorate level degree. For example, to become a doctor, any kind of doctor, whether that's a psychiatrist, an oncologist, a general practitioner, a surgeon, an OBGYN, an anesthesiologist, that requires usually 4 years of medical school after you get your bachelor's. Just like there's that LSAT test for law school, there's an MCAT test for medical school. And it's the same if you wanted to be like a doctor of dentistry, there's dental school. If you wanted to be a veterinarian, there's veterinary school, or a pharmacist. And then in addition to that 4 years of that medical training, then you have a few additional years of internship, residency, and sometimes fellowship in your specialty. So again, college can look different for everybody. For some people, it's 6 months, and for some people, it's 13 years. Some people go part-time, full-time, a little mixture of both. It all depends on what you want to do. Okay, so now I want to get into the different colleges and the college admissions process, and then we'll get into college costs and paying for college. So I do let people know that if they want to get a bachelor's degree, there's 2 different ways to do it. They could start at a 4-year university like UCSD or SDSU or Cal State San Marcos. Let's say they go there for 4 years for full time, and let's say they come out at the end with a bachelor's degree in, let's say, engineering, okay? Another way you can get that same bachelor's degree is you could start and do 2 years at a community college like City, Mesa, or Miramar. Then you could apply to transfer, again, apply to that same university, say SDSU, UCSD, and at the end get that same bachelor's in engineering. So which way should students do it? I tell them there's not a right or a wrong way, but there's benefits and limitations of each. So if you want to talk about the benefits of starting at a university and spending all your time doing your undergraduate at that same university, some of the benefits would be that, number one, you don't have to apply again to transfer, like you're already in, you're at the same place from the beginning to end. Also, these universities they all have dorms, so they all have a chance to do on-campus living, and sometimes they even guarantee it or even require it for a freshman to stay on campus at a university. And so for some students, they want to be able to have the experience of living on a campus, and sometimes it's just very important to them. They worked very hard to get a certain GPA, and they were able to get in as a freshman, so they really want to be able to go there for 4 years. Okay. However, as far as what is a limitation of doing all 4 years at a university is the cost. So a tuition for 1 year at a university is always going to be, I would say, usually, 10 times the amount, at least, that it would be at something like a community college. So that first 2 years of basically free tuition at a community college, does allow you to save money in the long term. So instead of paying a university tuition for 4 years, you're paying a community college tuition for 2 years, and then maybe only a university tuition for the last 2 years. It's also something where if the student is going in undeclared or undecided, sometimes it's a lot of money to pay to figure out, your second year at a very expensive private university that you thought you loved, psychology, but you take psychology classes and find out you hate it. That's something that you can learn for a lot less expensive at a community college. So there's no such thing, again, as a good or a bad way or a right or a wrong way. And sometimes you get full financial aid covered at a 4-year university. I'm just letting people know that there's different options, and they all have both benefits and limitations. Okay, so the 3 public systems of college in California are the community college systems. We have more than 110 community colleges. We also have the CSUs, and we also have the UCs. These also happen to be in order by the cost of tuition, and they're going from the least expensive to the most expensive. However, they are still all public. California residents do still pay in-state tuition, which is cheaper than if someone were coming from out of state to go to any of these colleges. And it still is comparatively affordable compared to many universities. We also have our private systems such as USD, Point Loma Nazarene, USC, Stanford, Caltech, those private universities. Okay, so a couple options or differences between them. To be considered for a community college, you have to either be 18 or have your diploma or equivalency. And after that, if you apply on time, your chance of getting in is 100%. If you're a California resident and you're 18 or you have a high school diploma or equivalency and you apply on time, you are going to be accepted to that community college as long as it's not full and you're applying at the last minute. It's there to serve the community. Your admissions is not based on a certain GPA or a certain test score. They can use those things for like course placement, but the idea is that there's a place for everyone at the community college. For four-year universities, some of them are much more selective. They don't have spots for every student. And so they're looking at things like your GPA. They're looking at things like your coursework. They might even be looking at additional factors like some universities consider an SAT score, your extracurricular activities, your community service, leadership, something like a common application personal statement, or like in the UC's case, it's personal insight questions, which are like kind of short essays that you're writing for the admissions application. So as far as benefits and limitations of the community college, I will point out that in terms of a benefit, it's a free application. It's very affordable to California residents. In fact, if the student is a California resident, they should be getting not just low-cost tuition, but they should be covered for free tuition through the promise for 2 years full time. So free tuition, if you're a California resident for 2 years, if you know, that's 4 semesters, a fall, a spring, a fall, a spring. You're getting a lot of the same general education you'd be getting at a university. As far as a limitation of the community college, a lot of times the highest degree they would offer is an associate's. And also most community colleges don't have dorms, so you often can't live on campus at a community college. I do like to kind of highlight some of the careers and some of the options we have available locally at our community colleges. We're really lucky in San Diego County. We have 3 different fire academies. We have, and although they're not offering a bachelor's in nursing, you can get an associate's degree in nursing or a CNA certificate at a college like City College or the College of Continuing Ed. There are personal training and fitness specialist certifications at City and Miramar. There's a phlebotomy program at Mesa College, a cosmetology program at City. Culinary arts are offered at Mesa and the College of Continuing Ed. There's veterinary technology at Mesa, respiratory therapy at Grossmont, audio production and digital music technology at City. And that's just a small portion of some of the things that are available through our community college system. For the CSUs, there are 23 campuses. We have 2 down here, San Diego State and Cal State San Marcos. Now, there is an application fee for these, although there is a waiver for low-income families. And now they are looking at A through G coursework. They are looking to see that you have at least a 2.5 minimum GPA, and to be competitive for some of the impacted schools like San Diego State or Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, it actually needs to be much higher than 2.5 to be competitive. There's not looking at an SAT score, but they all offer things like the possibility to go from a community college to transfer in there at an upper level. They are public and comparatively affordable. They all offer bachelor's degrees and higher. They all have on-campus options. And for some students who might not qualify for the same low-income financial aid, they might qualify for a middle-class scholarship. In California, we have a program called the Middle-Class Scholarship that is specifically for students that are California residents attending a CSU or a UC, and that middle-class scholarship goes toward their tuition. Okay, it might not cover the full 100% tuition, but it goes toward their tuition at a CSU or a UC. So what are the limitations of a Cal State? It is more expensive than a community college. It might have an impacted major or a capped major that's hard to get into. For the UCs, there's only 10 of these. We have UC San Diego down here, and they're kind of distributed up in the, there's the Davis, Berkeley, San Francisco, Merced, Santa Cruz area. And down here we have Irvine, Riverside, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara. There's also a fee for an AUC application. And now we're getting a little bit more selective. So now you need at least a 3.0 GPA minimum. And oftentimes it is higher than that to get into a selective UC, like one of the more impacted UCs. They don't look at SAT, but they do look at factors like your extracurriculars, your leadership, sports, or community service. They do ask you to write personal insight questions. UCs are looking to take about the top 12% based on GPA, about the top 12% of high school graduates from California. It's still public and a good value compared to a private university, and a California resident, you get in-state tuition. They offer bachelor's degrees and higher. They all have on-campus living options. Many of them have a middle-class scholarship option for middle-income families. But again, it's going to be more expensive than either a community college or a CSU. And a lot of times there are very competitive majors or capped majors that can be difficult to get into your first choice. For private colleges, they're all different, okay? Many of them thankfully use something called the Common App or the Common Application. So that you fill out just one Common App and then you can select which private colleges you want to send it to, which makes it easy, makes it nice. And then their campus settings and focuses can vary very widely. Their tuition cost varies widely. Their financial aid package varies widely. So it really depends on which private school you're talking about. One of the benefits of a private college is typically they don't charge out-of-state tuition. It's the same for every student. They offer bachelor's degrees and higher. They all have on-campus options. A lot of private schools tend to be smaller, have smaller class sizes. Some tend to be very specialized, have a particular emphasis, or be, have an extremely good reputation in a certain area. And also these financial aid packages from the private colleges, because the tuition is the highest there, they tend to also have the highest, the biggest financial aid packages. But the limitations, you probably know this already, they're going to be very expensive and the admissions can be extremely competitive. I want to also point out that there are a lot of vocational and technical institutions that usually don't require you to have a certain grade point average in high school or have taken certain classes. A lot of times they have open rolling year-round admissions. So if you look at something like the Paul Mitchell School, the Concord Career Institute, the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, these are examples of vocational schools. I do tell people check them out, see if you can get the same program offered at a community college for a lower cost. But there are a lot of great vocational and technical institutions out there. As far as a benefit, the admissions is usually not competitive. You can often earn a certificate or degree in a short amount of time. A lot of times it's tailored to be flexible around a work schedule, and many of them offer really good job placement or internship opportunities. As far as limitations, the vocational schools can sometimes be very pricey. Sometimes they don't even take something like a Cal Grant or FAFSA money, which that makes it really difficult. You want to make sure that if you can get the same program for cheaper at a community college, you look into that option. And even if they say they offer an associate degree, it might not be the kind that is for transfer. Okay, it might be just an end in itself to that career, not necessarily to go on to upper division classes. I also tell people to just be aware if it's a for-profit college, because many for-profit colleges, they're a business and they can suddenly close. Okay, so they can just be like St. Catherine's or the Art Institute or Brightwood College or Coleman University or ITT Tech. These are all examples of local colleges that were open one day and closed the next because they were not financially fluid. So people were in the middle of halfway through their degree and the doors just closed. So you do want to just be very careful with a for-profit college, okay? And then of course there's out-of-state colleges where you might get something called WUI, the Western Undergraduate Exchange, where they might offer you in-state tuition. It depends, but a lot of out-of-state colleges, again, they might use the Common App, they might not. They might require something called the CSS profile. It's a financial aid form in addition to the FAFSA. And again, whether it's public out of state, private out of state, you just have to do your research and find out, what are the benefits and limitations. I want to get into money next, but I want to touch on military options, because if your parents are or were in the military, I'm going to strongly recommend you go to the Cal Vet website. That's California Veterans. A lot of times you can get either partial or full tuition college at many California colleges and universities, especially if your parent was killed or disabled in the line of duty. Parents, if you are in the military, you probably know about if you have a disability, it would be with a percentage, like, are you 25% disabled, 50% disabled? But according to your service record, your student might be granted free or reduced admission at like a community college, a CSU, or a UC. And also members of the military get their own GI benefits to pay for college. And parents, if you didn't already spend that total amount on yourself and your own education, you are allowed to transfer it to someone else, such as a dependent. So just consider that if you haven't spent your whole GI Bill yet. Also, although public colleges all have some kind of veterans center, there are also many private universities that they are called yellow ribbon schools, and they often also will have a veterans resource center where you can work with them to find out about things like financial options. Students, if you yourself want to go into the military, but you don't want to necessarily enlist or enroll right at the age of 18, you might want to consider a college that has an ROTC program. There are many local colleges that might have like an Army ROTC, an Air Force ROTC, or whatever branch of the military you're looking at. And a lot of times these ROTC programs come with scholarships. So, and the military is often paying for some or all of your college expenses, but you are committing to enlist after earning your degree. If you do enlist or join a branch of the military right out of high school or very soon after, again, there's something called the GI Bill, so they'll often pay for college expenses. And all right, now I'm going to move into the money part. Okay, so let's talk about the cost of college. This is a little bit takes my breath away sometimes because it is like sticker shock when you see the sticker price of a car before there's any financing or discounts or deals or anything like that. And you go, oh my, that's a lot. And it is. But now then we're going to talk about financial aid and how to hopefully cover some of these costs. This is the cost of tuition, not the total cost of attendance like food and dorms, but this is the cost of tuition for 1 year on average of a full-time student at these different college systems. So 1 year at a community college, if you were to go full-time, it would probably be between $1,200 and $1,400 if you're doing full-time classes. But again, if you're a California resident, you should get your first 2 years of community college classes free through the promise. So that is the least expensive route. A CSU currently, like CSU San Marcos, Cal State LA, San Diego State, Cal Poly Pomona, Cal Poly SLO, Cal State Long Beach, is about $8,000 a year right now for the tuition. Okay. At a UC, like UC San Diego, UC Berkeley, UCLA, you're looking at upwards of $15,000 a year right now for tuition. And that those, by the way, these numbers are for California residents. It's very scary to look at what it is for out of state. And then if it's a private university like an MIT, a USC, a Harvard, Stanford, Yale, now you're definitely looking at like 40,000 plus. Sometimes it might be 50, 60, 70, $80,000 depending on the university. So in addition, of course, to this tuition cost, there's all these other costs like your books and supplies, your food, your housing, your transportation, you know, all those basic needs as well. So one of the good things is that when you're offered a financial aid package, it's not necessarily just for the tuition. Sometimes they're also offering additional money for things like housing, food, books, transportation, etc. So the question is not necessarily just how much does the college cost, that's an important piece, but also how much financial aid can we expect to receive as a family? And I'm going to hopefully give you some resources to find out about that portion of it. So these are the basic ways to pay for college. Number one, to save money. And I would have to have a pretty amazing job to save enough money to send my student to a private college university for 4 years, or even a UC or a CSU. So that is hard, but at least I could contribute toward it with savings. Some people choose to use a 529 savings plan because it's then tax deferred, and it's actually, once it's spent on college expenses, it's tax exempt. So a 529 is considered a parent asset until it becomes a student asset. So you do have to report that. But it is tax exempt. And so for a lot of people, that is worth it to invest in saving in a 529 plan. But you can save money however you like to save money. It's up to you. I also want to tell people there's a form that's really important to your senior year of high school, and it's the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. If the student has a social security number, they're going to be filling out a FAFSA. If the student does not have a social security number, but they've been living in California for at least 3 years, they would fill out a different form called the California DREAM Act. They would not be eligible for any federal financial aid, but they might be eligible for some California state aid if they went to college in the state of California. This form you fill out your senior year of high school and then every year that you're in college. And this is what lets you know anything that you're eligible for from the federal government, the state government, and the colleges. So what might be offered from the government, depending on your family size and income, are grants, work study, and loans. Grants are great, and if you're offered one, always accept it. Grant is free money you don't have to pay back. Grant is gift aid. So grants and scholarships are the best two forms of financial aid because they are gift aid. They are free money you don't have to pay back. Work study is something that might be offered for the student to get a part-time job in college, and then their work study award is paying for their salary, but they get to keep it to use for whatever expenses they need. And then the most complicated kind of financial aid is a loan. And if you're offered a loan, please know you do not have to accept it, but you might be offered a loan. And whether that's through the FAFSA or whether that's through your private bank or through an online company, there are many different ways to get loans, and they have different credit, interest rates and things like that, or they might be based on the credit score or not. So there could be a loan to a student or a loan to a parent or both. But filling out the FAFSA or DREAM Act is how you find out about all grants, all work study, or any government loans you can qualify for. Scholarships are a separate process, and they also all have their own due dates, their own amounts, and their own requirements. So I'm going to give you a few scholarship resources to start thinking about, but scholarships and grants are, if you can qualify for them and receive them, that is the best way to pay for college. Work study is also great. Savings are great. Loans, I tell people, decide on it as a family. Think about it as like a business investment. What is your rate of in turn, what will you get out of it? In other words, if you're going to borrow money for college, is the student then going to get a job that can pay back for student loans? Okay, you want to think about what's your return on investment. You're going to start to get into complicated things as you get closer to college. Like, they give you a number called a student aid index or an SAI. It used to be called an EFC. This number could be negative. It could be 0. It could be 5,000. It could be 50,000. It's just a number that financial aid offices use, where they take that SAI and subtract the cost of attendance to see what's still left. And the cost of attendance is what varies from college to college. Your SAI stays the same. Your family's SAI is the SAI. It can only change year to year. The cost of attendance can change from college to college, and usually tuition is the biggest deal with that. So again, once the student is in high school, like their senior year, they'll fill out a form like the FAFSA or the DREAM Act. The only people who could not fill out either form is if you're on a non-immigrant visa, like an F, H, or J visa. Unfortunately, you don't qualify for either form. Otherwise, pretty much everybody will fill out, most people a FAFSA, and for some people a DREAM Act. What info are they going to ask for on that? They'll ask for family size, student and parent income if there is any, student and parent assets if there are any, the value of any businesses or farms you own. It will not require the value of the home you live in, and it will not require your retirement accounts. Those are not considered assets. Also, that parent income is going to continue to be considered until the student is age 24, unless the student, there's a couple situations, like if the student is homeless, if they're legally emancipated, if they get married, if they themselves have a child, or if they join the military, but or if they're a foster student at age 16 or older. If none of those apply, then parents, they're still going to be considering your info until the student's age 24. I know everybody always asks me about, how do I get a full ride? There's no such thing. I've never seen a college financial aid letter that has the words full ride on it. It's just not how they package things. What they might do is they might give you a package that's so great that it covers all the cost of attendance, but it's not just going to be a single scholarship called full ride. Okay. If you qualify for any federal money, like a Pell Grant or work study or a federal loan, that would be in there. Also, any California money, like a Cal Grant, the DREAM Act, a middle class scholarship, a Chafee Youth Grant, that could be in there. Also, any institutional aid, something like the Promise or the Blue and Gold tuition coverage through the UCs, anything that's from the school system itself, from the college itself. And then you might also be bringing in outside money from outside scholarships. So, one way to see, like, okay, well, what would my SAI be? Like, can I expect no grants, some grants, loans? I encourage people to go to studentaid.gov and go to their aid estimator. It's something you can play around with. You're not filling out a real FAFSA, but you can enter, like, your income, and you can even enter a fake income, your annual income, and a couple more items, and it'll give you an estimated SAI if the student were to, like, go to college next year. What would your what would your SAI be? So that gives you a little bit of an idea that you can start planning, okay? So I do recommend people to check out the CalKids website at calkids.org. If you're a California resident and your student's going to public school, based on your family size and income, you might even already have a $500 scholarship waiting there from the state of California, earning interest through a 529 plan. So check out calkids.org. And I know that a lot of scholarships, you do have to wait till the students are in high school, especially till they're a senior, but there are a few that are available for younger students that I want to highlight, like Big Future, that's for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. The Paula B. and Oliver W. Jones Foundation is for 10, 11, 12. There's also a contest called the Breakthrough Junior Challenge that's starting to open up right now. It'll be due every June, and it takes student entries as young as age 13, and students make a 2-minute video on a STEM concept. And FastWeb is another database where you can put in your grade level and or your expected high school graduation year, and they'll give you, okay, here's scholarships that are for younger students. So sometimes you'll see a contest or a scholarship for a younger student, but sometimes you do just have to wait. Okay. I want to make sure you know that when you get this recording or when you look up on our CalSoap San Diego website tomorrow, I will have a link and it will include all these resources like our website, CalSoap San Diego, California Career Zone, California Colleges, all these different resources that I've shared, and as well as our social media handles, etc. Let me go ahead and stop sharing for now. Okay. The government. Okay, there is a question about government cuts impacting student financial aid for college. Unfortunately, I can't answer that because I don't know the answer yet. But yes, the Department of Education going through major cuts is of concern. And unfortunately, we'll just have to update you as we go on that. Okay, it is 7 and I don't want to take any more of your time. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude this for tonight. Thank you to everybody for attending, and I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.